So hi there, and welcome to this weekend's Common Constitutionalist audio podcast. Yeah, once again, I couldn't get to the video, and it was just cold and crummy and snowy out anyway, so I just decided to stay and do the audio version of the Common Constitutionalist weekend podcast. So today we're going to be talking about one topic, and it's, hey, look at that, Florida election fraud. That's what we're going to be discussing today on the Common Constitutionalist Weekend audio podcast.
You are listening to the Common Constitutionalist, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, free from the prying eyes of establishment black helicopters.
Alright, so welcome back. And again, I am Brent Smith. I am the Common Constitutionalist. And before we get into Florida election fraud, first some good news I heard. I think it was yesterday I heard that the liberal hack, Bill Nelson, the Democrat from Florida, who is in the Senate competition versus Rick Scott, the current governor of Florida, apparently, according to the latest hand recount, Bill Nelson has virtually no shot at beating Rick Scott, so hallelujah and boo frickin' who for Bill Nelson, and good riddance, brother. But other than that, with every passing day, things they just seem like they're going from bad to worse in Florida, particularly in Broward and West Palm and those counties. And it's always you ever notice that it's always the same counties? It's the same going all the way back to old Al Gore and George W. Bush, and nothing's changed. There's just rampant fraud down in those counties, and it's just ridiculous. So let's get right into it. Oh, and also, I was reading some of the headlines this morning and yesterday, and all the leftist mainstream media is they're consistently classifying the election problems as bungling attempts by election officials in Broward County and West Palm and wherever the heck it is, but for the most part it's Broward County, as they're calling it the election problems bungling. Yeah, sure, it's anything but bungling. I found the website Flag and Cross, and they had a little thing on voter fraud, so I'll share that with you. So voter fraud, the author says, is certainly a problem in America, whether Democrats care to admit it or not. And of course, they never admit it when when the voter fraud is lodged against them. And the reason, the author says, is that liberals won't say anything about it is because the Dems are behind the fraud 11 out of 10 times. And that is exactly correct. The author is right. I don't remember a single time where the Republicans have ever been accused of voter fraud. Oh, sure, they're accused of racism and all that other crap and voter intimidation and, white nationalists, this other crap. They're intimidating the minority vote, but they've never been accused of actual physical voter fraud. I mean, other than colluding with the Russians, don't you know? Sure. Funny, haven't heard about that one this time around. Now you mention it. What the heck? Okay. So about this, Florida Senator Marco Rubio had some pretty big news to share. Senator Marco Rubio tweeted, "No evidence of fraud in Florida election? A question mark. Dems got voters to use altered forms to fix and submit as many mail ballots as possible after Florida deadline in hopes that a judge would later order the state to count them." And today, that was a few days ago, I think, that's exactly what a federal judge did. And I'll get into that later also. But then there's this piece from the Naples Daily News. I let my subscription lapse, so I must have missed this one from the Naples Daily News. From the Naples Daily News, a day after Florida's election left top state races too close to call. Yeah, sure, they left top state, whatever. A Democratic Party leader directed staffers and volunteers to share altered election forms with voters to fix signature problems on absentee ballots, ready, after the state's deadline. That seems to be, it's starting to appear to be the common denominator after the state's deadline. They continue. The altered forms surfaced in Broward, Santa Rosa, Citrus, and Okaloosa counties and were reported to federal prosecutors to review for possible election fraud as Florida counties completed a required recount in the top 3 races. But an email obtained by USA Today, speak much? Let's try that one again, shall we? But an email obtained by the USA Today Network Florida shows that Florida Democrats were organizing a broader statewide effort beyond those counties to give voters the altered forms to fix improper absentee ballots after the November 5th deadline. Democratic Party leaders provided staffers with copies of a form known as the Cure Affidavit that had been modified to include an inaccurate November 8th deadline. Fancy that. And we'll continue with this fun, entertaining topic of vote fraud. I just can't get over this. Right after this. Be right back.
You're listening to The Common Constitutionalist. Let the truth be known.
All right, I am back. Now, for this next segment kind of gets stuck in my craw a little bit, and I'll hone in on it a little bit later in the podcast. But the Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz showed up in the picture, so to speak, and he says that the GOP was actually given a court order to inspect their election headquarters, but were denied. This is Broward County, of course. Yeah, this is like ground zero for election fraud. I'm telling you, the Ruskies have got nothing on Broward County. Maybe that Snipes woman is. I know, that's it. The Snipes, she's a Russian agent. By cracky. Had anybody ever look at her, like her birth certificate? Maybe her real name is Natasha Snipes or something like that. Boris and Natasha. I don't know. But at any rate, okay, so here's what Matt Gaetz says, the GOP congressman. And here's what he said. When I showed up with a court, now here we go. When I showed up with a court order giving the Rick Scott team the ability to inspect what in the world that they were doing, they didn't let us behind the gates, they being the Democrats. They allowed Democrats back and forth, but they excluded Republicans with court orders from being able to conduct legal oversight to make sure there were no shenanigans. And that's what Matt Gaetz says. And that's what's this whole incident stuck in my craw. And like I said, I'll get to that in a little bit. And then you add this from Breitbart. 3 statewide races in Florida are headed to recount, and all depend on results from a county whose supervisor of elections has a history of losing ballots. Yeah, losing ballots. You believe that? And breaking laws. I believe that. By allowing illegal immigrants and felons to vote, as well as illegally destroying ballots. And they continue. Broward County Supervisor Brenda Natasha Snipes' office has admitted they don't know how many ballots that still need to be counted. Jeez, and people just, you know what? I'm going to hold all my editorial comments until I'm complete, and then I'll go off on all this nonsense. Snipes' latest failure to finalize Tuesday's election returns days after the polls close is also a violation of Florida law. So it's not just a rule, it's a violation of Florida law, which requires elections officials to report all early voting and all tabulated vote-by-mail results to the Department of State within 30 minutes after the polls. Not 30 hours, and certainly not 30 days. 30 minutes. That's the law. It's not a rule. It's not a guideline. It's a freaking law. They continue. Thereafter, the canvassing board shall report, with the exception of provisional ballot results, updated precinct elections results to the department at least every 45 minutes until results are completely reported, unquote, from Breitbart. But as we can clearly see, election results or election rules and election laws, they don't count when Democrats are losing. They only apply when they are winning. And I suppose neither do legally submitted court orders either. That one really sticks with me. I'll tell you what. So anyway, we're going to take another quick break. And after I come back, I've got about a question or 10, at least, and some comments. I'll be right back.
You're listening to the Common Constitutionalist. Let the truth be known.
All right, so now that I've got the niceties out of the way, where do you even begin with this crap? It literally is so shameless, and it's so brazen what the Dems are doing. And again, it's right out there. It's in your face is what it is. But the defense always seems to be the same. And the mantra is, the go-to mantra always is, we just want to have every vote to count. That's all we want. All we want is every vote count. That's it. Every vote has to count. Well, the problem with that is the Republicans want every vote to count. I want, as a constitutional conservative, I want every vote to count. I want every legal vote to count. But I also, if there are rules that are applicable to counting the votes, like time stamps and finalizations of election results within 30 minutes of the polls closing, you know that going in. This is no big revelation. This is no big surprise. They all knew this. They've known this for probably, I think it's decades that these rules have been in place, and that's just the way it is. You know it going in, you know what you have to deal with, and that's what you do. And if for whatever reason you can't do that, you get fired and they hire somebody who can do that. And if in fact you don't like the rule, or you don't like the Florida law, then you elect a bunch of people and you get them to go there and you change the daggum thing, however way you do it. I don't think it's in the Florida Constitution. I think it's a Florida law. You change the bloody law. You just don't say, well, we don't want to do this. We're just going to keep counting ballots ad infinitum until we get the guy we want, which is basically what they've attempted to do. But like I said, it always comes back to the Democrats. Don't you want every vote to count? That's what the Democrats want. They just want every vote to count. And unfortunately, they keep trying this tactic because it keeps working. So why not continue it? If you got a tactic that works, you just it's like running up, I do football analogies from time to time because I love me some football. And if you run a play, it works great. You run it again, it keeps working. You keep running that dadgum play until it stops working. And then you move on to something else. You don't have to try and reinvent the wheel all the time. You just go with what works. And with what Democrats, they know works, is we just want every vote to count. And the Republicans don't want certain votes to count because they're racist, homophobic, and white nationalists, KKK, whatever it happens to be. We're just evil, and so we don't want to count minority votes or some such crap. And the Republicans will, well, let's just not mince words. They'll just bitch and moan about it. But no one ever musters up enough courage to do anything. They just go out into the press, they go on Fox News or whatever else, or tweet, and they just complain about it, and nothing ever gets done. So the bottom line on this thing is, what is the point in having these rules and laws like legally recognized election deadlines? What's the point? I mean, why even bother having these laws and these deadlines if you're going to allow people to get away with not abiding by them? It's just ridiculous. And what is so daggum difficult about voting? I mean, you used to go, you make an effort to go vote. It's your civic duty, but you make an effort to go on election day and vote. But apparently, that's just too hard for us lazy freaking Americans. So we already have early voting. We have vote by mail. We have absentee voting. Who else? Oh, I don't even know what other kind of voting. And still, you get the vote tallies in time. and it's funny how that works. The richest districts in Florida, Broward, West Palm, and whatnot, they can never seem to get it right and on time. They can't seem to get their ballots in on time, and they can't seem to count them properly. While other Florida districts with, I guarantee, a lot less resources than Broward and West Palm has, they get them in on time, on schedule, everything's right, there's never a problem, it's unbelievable. And even, think about it, some of these districts in western Florida were wiped out from the recent hurricanes this past summer, yet they were still able to get their vote tallies in on time. Go figure. So I'm going to take another quick break, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. Relatively short and sweet audio podcast. I'll be right back.
You're listening to The Common Constitutionalist. Let the truth be known.
All right, I am back. And once again, I'd like to remind you all, and me, because I couldn't get it right the first time I did the break. My name is Brent Smith. I am the Common Constitutionalist, and you are listening to the Common Constitutionalist Weekend audio podcast. And I won't bother going back into the reason why it's not the weekend video podcast. It just ain't. Live with it. All right, so this is the thing that stuck in my craw earlier. This the Florida Rep Matt Gaetz, the Congressman Matt Gaetz. Now, I applaud him for obtaining a court order. That was terrific. And a court order is like a warrant. But then, at least it seemed like, the way he said things, that I obtained a court order and they wouldn't let us in. Well, boo-hoo for you too, dude. This is like a warrant. And you don't just complain that you couldn't get in. I mean, is there any reason why this guy didn't have a police escort to escort him onto the premises? And, you know, the nice thing about having police there is they all wear body cams. And the body cams record everything, including the Democrats refusing to let Republicans in with a legally issued or authorized warrant. That would have been fun to see, frankly. And frankly, it would have been must-see TV, so to speak. To see some videos of Dems defying a court order. Wouldn't that be great? And what about the feds? I haven't heard anything about the federal government. I mean, the federal government is constantly sticking its nose in our business every day about everything. Except we don't seem to be hearing much from the federal government, from the Trump administration about this, other than beefing and bellyaching about it. Now, I realize these elections are run by local authorities, but these are elections for national office. So I don't understand, and maybe somebody can clue me in the comments section or something, why Trump can't send the FBI in and seize all this stuff and get it done right the first time around, instead of waiting for all these shenanigans to occur. And the longer it takes for you people to sort this out, the more fraud that can occur. I mean, duh. This isn't rocket science. And another thing is the other court order. Okay, the court order that the judge actually allowed ballots to be counted that were placed in after the deadline. They were changed after the deadline, and still this judge is allowing them to be counted. Well, this, to me, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a judge or a jurist or anything else, but as far as I can see, this judge was legislating from the bench when he allowed post-deadline ballots to be counted. I mean, there's no other way to describe it as far as I'm concerned, and that's not his job. A judge has no authority to make those sort of demands. He just orders them to break basically what he did is he ordered them to break a long-standing Florida election law. He ordered these people to break the law. How does that make any sense? Judges, as far as I know, they can rule on the legality of something, the constitutionality of something, but they can't tell others what they must or must not do. Therefore, in my opinion, this judge Isn't he operating outside of his authority, which would make his ruling null and void? I mean, doesn't it seem reasonable and logical to anyone but me that this judge is operating outside of his purview by telling this is what you have to do? That's not a judge's job. He's supposed to rule on the legality and constitutionality of things up or down and leave this is what you must not do, this is what you must do to the legislature. That's the way it's supposed to work. At least I thought it was. And aren't Democrats, they're all about precedent, legal precedent. So the election commission, or whoever's in charge in Florida statewide, they have precedent on their side. These election rules have been around for decades, as far as I know. And I thought the Democrats, like I said, they're all about precedent. Well, the precedent was set long ago that these are the rules, and everybody's been abiding by them for decades, except for Broward County, who can't seem to abide by any rule. And this is the kind of stuff that just sticks in my craw, because it seems like every time something like this goes through the court system, and it gets to a federal court or a federal bench, a district court or an appeals court or something like that, all we do is we sit back and we piss and moan about it, and we watch these judges run roughshod over existing laws and rules and taking away legislative and executive power, whether it be on the state or the federal level. It doesn't make any difference. They are legislating from the bench. And no one seems to say a word about it beyond, well, we're going to file a countersuit or something equally as stupid as that. No one ever stands up and questions the authority of these political hacks dressed in black robes. I don't understand it. Why the governor or somebody from the legislature can just tell a judge, sorry, this is beyond your authority. You don't have any authority to tell us what to do. You only have the authority to rule on the legality of the case or the constitutionality of the case. Beyond that, you don't have any authority to tell us what to do. And since you're trying to tell us what to do, your ruling is null and void and blank off for you, and we're going to do it through legislation. We're not going through the courts on this because it's not a court matter. I don't know. Somebody someday is going to have the nuts to come up and say that, and I don't know what the backlash would be, and frankly, I don't care, because something's going to have to be done about this, because the legal system in this country is fatally flawed, and it all usually comes back to hack judges that put their political preferences above the law and above the Constitution, whether it be a state or federal. Other than that, I ain't got a daggum word to say. So this is the Common Constitutionalist. I'm Brent Smith, and I'm signing off, because that's about it. That's all I got to say about Florida election fraud, and hopefully this gets put to bed soon, because we're into presidential election season already. Yay, team. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Common Constitutionalist Weekly Podcast.